Hello everyone. Well, you can see here I got my first cased grain blocks of king oyster mushrooms for this season. I cased them when they were 3 weeks. The idea being that they would pin in about 3.5 weeks. And when I cased them too initially, put it on there thick, I closed up the bags and let it fully colonize till the top of the vermiculite was over halfway. But really it started pinning before that was even complete. You can see all the pins on the side here starting below the casing layer. And yet there are pins on the top too, but they're just now starting. See one creeping up on the sides there. And of course that's not what I want. I want it to pin right off the top, because this is kind of a similar problem I was having with the sawdust blocks, trying to get the pins to pin on the casing towards the center of the casing and not all over the sides, making just a few large ones. So I've got some ideas on how to remedy that. One of the things I'm going to do, as you see here, I have all my blocks that I'm going to case up today. These grain blocks are only 2 weeks old. Also too, I only mix these up at the start after inoculation, and then I just let them sit on the shelf until they fully colonized, which I wouldn't normally do if I was using these for spawn into sawdust, just because the grain would be too hard to break apart when you don't mix it up. It really grows together hard, and yeah, mixing it up another time will break it up more evenly so you can mix it into spawn. But here makes a nice hard block. But yeah, only 2 weeks of colonization for these. I'm going to case them and then reclose the top of the bag. And you don't have to do it really tightly. I'm just going to take the metal piece of wire and just clamp it pretty much. And then do the same procedure. It looks like it takes 29 days, around that, for pins to start. So I'm going to go by that amount of time. Also too, I'm going to be doing the same thing to some of these bags of Entoloma. I actually got to toss this one out because I can see some green mold here. I don't know how that got in there, but oh well. Yeah, I'm going to try casing these and maybe even poking some holes on the side to see if anything comes out that way too. But you see I have some wax paper, and maybe you're wondering why that's here. I got some ideas on how to remove the vermiculite casing altogether. I remember years back when I first learned about doing cased grain techs and whatnot for mushrooms, that you could use wax paper over top of it as a kind of a substitute for the casing, to create a bit of a microclimate underneath of it. Now, of course, that's not going to add any moisture to the block like the casing does, because this grain isn't particularly fully hydrated and really needs the casing to draw some more moisture from. So what I might do is just put a very thin layer of vermiculite and then a layer of wax paper over top of it. And I'll cut the wax paper too to shape, so it fits into the opening of the bag, and it doesn't have to be real snug in there. But it doesn't really matter how tight it's laid down around the edge of the bag, because the wax paper, much like the wax parafilm lab film, will allow gas exchange and for the block to breathe. And ideally, hopefully, what will happen is pins will form underneath of it, and then as the pins grow, they'll push the wax paper up keeping this area of humidity in there until it gets to a point, you know, maybe I cut the plastic about yay high, just underneath the filter patch pretty much. And then that'll give us a space as the mushrooms crest out of the top to really form out caps. And you know, by then I can just take the wax paper off the top. If I do it with a thin layer of vermiculite, I might have to wipe it off eventually, or, you know, give a quick mist or rinse of the mushrooms to get any vermiculite off the top if it sticks to the paper, but I have to see how that goes. I might also, too, put a little bit of vermiculite, let that colonize closed up, and then come back to it, you know, once it starts pinning, because it's going to pin fine, because it's going to have plenty of humidity with the bag closed up. But I'll come back to it after it starts pinning, then put some wax paper over it, and that'll keep the humidity in and allow a thin layer of vermiculite to produce a full flush. And that should prevent any of this issue of mushrooms coming off the side too fast. You know, also casing these at 2 weeks instead of 3 weeks is going to prevent that too. Hopefully this will go a bit better than trying to figure that out with the grain blocks. So you remember I had, or with the sawdust blocks rather. So you remember I had all those problems with the sawdust blocks trying to get the first flush of mushrooms to come off evenly and all the same size. So I'm gonna do a few of these normal, like I did those ones, so I can see how they do at the 2 weeks. Then I'll do a few of them with a little bit of vermiculite and wax paper, and then I'll do a few with just wax paper and have a variety of experiments to share. A little bit cleaner, using my road cone that I use to load up the grain, you know, rinsed and cleaned it off, and then I got the same scoop cleaned off as well. Now I can get the vermiculite in there, and notice that I don't have a whole bunch of it sticking to the side of the bag, so when the mushrooms grow up, it's not going to grab it and be something that I have to clean off the mushrooms later. I got the wax paper in these two. You can see the sheet of it in there. I didn't actually cut it to any circular shape, I just pulled a length out that was wider than the bag and then rinsed both sides of it off, because the paper is a lot easier to work with when it's wet. But if you look down in there, you can see where the wetness of it sticks to all the way to the sides, and there's little pockets of air underneath of it in between the block, and those little pockets of air will be the microclimate for pins to form.